Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Inner. Today I'm joined by my sister, Alx Uttermann. Hi, Alex.
Hey, Nelson. Good to be here.
Awesome. Alex, if you could introduce yourself, tell the audience a little bit about you and what you've been doing.
Oh my. Yeah, sure. Um, wow, I don't even know where to start with that. I am something of a healer, I suppose, and a spiritual teacher. Certainly not by my own volition, I would say. And spirituality kind of whacked me strongly in the late 1990s. I was leading a very different life from all that and really wasn't all that interested in spirituality per se, and was on the fence about is there a God and all that kind of stuff, and really got sort of fast tracked, I guess, into direct experience of miracle energy, of supernatural realities, and of the divinity, mostly, not entirely, but mostly via Swami Kaleswar, who I think Nelson is discovering very directly just recently. And through Swami Kaleshwar and going to South India to his place there, this is behind me is a photo of the Jesus temple there. And he constructed in South India in Penukonda in the early 2000s. So I wound up training with him directly, living on his ashram for 5 solid years, and essentially steeped in the miracle tradition of not only South India, but of course, where Jesus got the goods and learned the miracle abilities, where all the illustrious saints that we can name in our human history have gotten their enlightenment and their direct experience of God in different ways, especially as God the Mother, Divine Feminine. And so that's been my life since 1999. Since I met Swami Kaleshwar directly in person, first indirectly, I met his energy. And then within a few weeks, I met him personally. And that was it. We just picked up wherever we left off the last lifetime that we were together. And so what I do now is I teach and heal. I learned extreme encyclopedic knowledge of how this creation operates, especially from the point of view of the miracles, and particularly from the point of view of healing. And even more specifically, healing the primary disease that affects human beings, which is heartbreak.
Yeah.
Heartbreak, not only romantic. Westerners often think, oh, well, it's just romance. No, heartbreak, any extreme loss, any trauma, any family of origin abuse, any sexual assault and abuse. Maybe somebody grew up in a war zone, right? Or had a horrific professional disappointment. You know, I live in Hollywood where dreams come to die, and there are a lot of heartbroken people here who kind of came here to make it in the industry and didn't. And it's a heartbreak. So everything that human beings are experiencing on the physical and the emotional levels are stemming from some initial and prodigious heartbreak. So how to heal that is the question.
Yeah.
And and the answer is there are myriad ways because no two heartbreaks are exactly alike. So that's my training, my specialty from one angle. And it's what I've dedicated my life to sharing.
That's amazing. You're one of the few people I've ever heard talk about that understanding of heartbreak and how that's really the hindrance for humanity.
Hmm.
Because, like you said, most people see it as just romantic heartbreak. Oh, I had a girlfriend in high school, broke my heart. I don't want to love again. We almost got married and then we didn't. It's not that. I'd say the most common form of heartbreak is people knowing what they're called to do and not being able to do it.
Or people being so snowed in the illusion of this life, even as a small child, that they don't know what they're called to do. They can't even hear it.
Yeah,
Why can't they hear it? Because I would offer, the primordial heartbreak is the illusion that we are separate from the source.
yeah,
And that comes early.
yeah,
The moment we come out of the mother's womb, generally, we're like, cut. Can't remember very much. And
yeah,
then there's this pain and this uneasiness and this longing and this, why am I here? And oh, I don't know. And the whole thing's worthless anyway. And I'm worthless. And so on and so on. the heartbreak of the eye.
Yeah.
Mm, painful. So,
Powerful.
so the question is, how do we make the bridge back
Hmm.
for people? And the answer is it varies with the individual, but always the road leads back one way or another to the divine
Yeah.
inside.
I've heard it said in a way where it's like humanity's original environment. It's like the fish are made for the water. Humanity's environment that we were meant for is the presence of the divine. So,
Mm,
one way, shape, or form, the solution to all of our issues is reconnecting
correct.
with our original environment. All the
Correct.
other things are manifestations of our separation.
And the $1 million question is, how do we make that reconnection?
Mhm.
And that's what the ancient saints of India, the great rishis, the cosmic researchers, they wrote down the formulas on ancient manuscripts, some of which are like 5,000, 7,000 years old, where they explained in detail how those reconnections can occur through the doorway of the miracle energy, especially. And all of that, of course, linked to and under the sort of umbrella of the department of Mother Divine, who is the keeper of the supernatural and the miraculous.
Yeah. I've always called her like when dealing with mother and father, it's like father is a immovable object, but mother is
Mm,
the unstoppable force.
mm.
And then we're all their kids, so
Yes, true that. Hmm.
so I absolutely agree with y'all when y'all say that in order to move in the miraculous, there must be some interaction with mother.
Hmm.
If you could talk a bit about some of the encounters that you've had of mother. I know you've had audible experiences, but the cool stuff is the visible experiences, the crazy, chaotic stuff. That's why I got you on here, because not too many people have those visible experiences with the royal family like I do.
Cutting to the chase, huh? Wow. Um, yeah, so let me preface this by saying the way that Swami Kaleswar, even let me back up from the point I was about to make, which is that Kaleshwar himself I say was because he left his body, but I mean, he is, for all intents and purposes, even more present and more available and more capable now than he was when he was physically alive. But nonetheless, he was, or he is, an absolute expert in the nature of Mother Divine in a way that I don't think many saints, even those who do have channels to her, meaning the ability to communicate and connect with her, have. And what he would say is that our big boss, Jesus, who was hands down the greatest healer that this planet has ever seen, the greatest saint, holy person ever. And all the Indian saints, all the yogis, all the Islamic saints, everybody knows this, and they all bow to Christ. Why he was unique in one level had to do with his relationship to Mother Divine. Jesus wanted to know her full range. He said to her, so the form that Jesus dealt with was Ma Kali,
Hmm.
the peak form of Mother, who is super fierce, really fierce. And Christ said to her, hey, Mother, I want to know your full range, all your negativity, all your positivity, the whole gamut of what makes you you. I don't know that in this creation prior to Christ anybody had asked for that. I mean, that's a pretty enormous and spiritually, I would say, mature request to make of the mother. Anyway, her response to him was, yeah, well, I'd love to share that with you, my son, but you couldn't handle it. His response was, bring it on. Whatever you want in exchange for that. I want that information. I want that experience of you. I need to know your full range. And his price, his bargain that he cut with the mother to be able to receive that from her, the full totality of understanding her, was the crucifixion. He was very happy to undergo the experience on the cross, knowing that he was getting from the mother the full range of her. Why did he want that? Not for himself. He wanted that for the consciousness of the planet to pay it forward so that millions of people could come up to that understanding and that level and that consciousness to know who she is, both on her incredibly negative side as well as her incredibly divine side. And she is all of that. She is both and. She's the original both and. And I think many times when people talk about the mother, they are generally, they're kind of coming in a very, pardon me, but what I consider a kind of gooey new age way about the divine feminine. Oh, she's so beautiful. Oh, it's so this. Oh, it's and if we look at nature,
Hmm.
who's our big mother, right? Nature is fierce.
Yeah.
I mean, for one thing, we exist on a planet where majority of the beings on this planet have to eat another being in order to survive. What kind of crazy, lunatic, violent creation is that? The whole food chain, right? It's insane. I mean, if you look at it reasonably, like, if I were the queen of the universe designing this thing, I don't think I'd make it that creatures have to eat other creatures in order to survive. That just doesn't make sense. But so nature's very fierce, she's very beautiful. We have gorgeous sunsets and we have beautiful vistas and we have mountains and we have streams and we have waterfalls and we have birds flying in the sky and sunsets and all of that.
And we have
Yeah.
storms and
And we
hurricanes,
have tsunamis
volcanic
and
eruptions.
earthquakes
Yeah.
and we have wildfires and we have all of it. She is the totality of the whole expressed creation in all of its forms, right? Be they giant, seemingly unmovable forms like mountains, or forms like a butterfly, as delicate and temporary as that. She's the totality of it. So when we're dealing with mother as mother, we're missing half the show if we don't reckon with her fierce nature. And in that, if we don't reckon with her negativity as well, the negativity of the creation, which is part and parcel of the creation and part and parcel of us, all human beings. I mean, if you're in a form, you're carrying some negativity. It's just a given. It's the operating system, of the planet. So I say this because dealing with her in form through Swami Kaleswar was not exactly a bed of roses. And his business, if you want to say it like this, was making spiritual masters, making masters on the level of Jesus who could handle the illusion, the negativity, as well as the divinity, the way that Christ did. That's Swami Kaleshwar's marching orders. That's what he came to do. And in that, it's required to restore the role of Mother Divine in our creation because there's no Jesus without the Mother. Okay, so that's a lot of heavy lifting in our creation, especially if you look at the religions, the Christianity paths that mostly wrote the mother out entirely. Catholicism kept her as his mother, and as there's a whole lot of female saints. I mean, there's essentially a pantheon in Catholicism. Orthodoxy also, Greek, Russian, etc., all the orthodoxies, which are really old, kept the mother. But everything that came after Catholicism pretty much wrote her off completely and wrote her out of the narrative.
Yeah.
Big mistake.
Yeah. Creates an
Because
imbalance.
well, yeah, but also if you really want to understand Jesus, you have to understand his role with the mother, which was quite unique, particularly with the fierce form of mother that we call Kali, the
Mhm.
peak divine form of mother, who's incredibly fierce. Why is she fierce? She's fierce because she has to be more fierce than the worst negativity that's running rampant on the planet.
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, part of Christ's nature as well. Most people don't relate to him necessarily as fierce, but
A
he is a
warrior.
kind of do what? Sorry?
He's a warrior.
He is a warrior, and he is a form of Mother Divine in a he's in a male visage, but his nature is also very much like Kali. He's like a kinder, gentler face of Ma Kali. So all that said, Swami Kaleshwar was hooking us up, his students, to her in her most peak fierce form. And unfortunately for many of us, let me say it this way, in the histories on the planet, there are many, many, many accounts of saints who spent their whole life doing meditations to build their soul energy up to be able to stand in the room with her, to get her what's called a darshan in Sanskrit, seeing her. Eyes open, face to face, not a dream, vision, meditation, hallucination. Nope, nobody was doing ayahuasca. We were straight as an arrow, yet she's there physically present. Many saints tried to get that darshan. They would spend their whole lives doing their meditations. They'd build their soul up to the point where they could, in fact, attract her in such a way they could have that darshan. She would come as Ma Kali. She's so frightening and fierce that they would drop dead of a heart attack on the spot. Bummer. Better luck next lifetime. Swami Kaleswar would say, well, she's not really playing fair there. Because, again, they can't use anything in that physical lifetime, in that physical form, that they got from her. Again, they have to incarnate. Again, they have to find a master who has channels to her. That's not easy. There aren't many. Again, they have to go through all the meditation, hard work, whatever. Again, they have to peel away the layers of the Maya, the illusion off their soul. Again, they have to go through all of that and hope that they get the good karma, the good fortune to stand in the room with her again. And again, open that channel and then be able to use what they got from her, meaning the miracle capacities, the capacity to connect any soul in the cosmic and help them. Oh, I'm so sorry. That really should not be happening. Sorry about that background noise. So his goal was to hook us up to the highest level of mother and make a success out of it. Very tricky. In those levels, she's playing in the big illusions and she's playing for keeps. And she's very, she comes with a lot of illusion, a lot of Mahamaya, a lot of misdirection, a lot of tricks and games and reflection back to a human being of their particular karmas that she's not particularly happy to see us having on our soul bank account. Like when she looks at us, she sees all the crap. You can't pull anything over on your own mother. Everybody knows this, right? Imagine that times a million. And standing in the room with her. And she's looking at you and she's absolutely furious. Because she's seeing all your millions of lifetimes of crap that you've done that you don't even remember. And she's reflecting that. And in the mirror of her nature, writ very large, that's an ugly reflection. You can see why people would keel over of a heart attack. You can also see on some level, if we're talking about this mirrorism between each of us and the reflected divinity in a different form, how painful that can be. Okay, so it was the early 2000s, and Swami Kaleswar started talking very deeply about the mother, really deeply. And as I say, he's an expert on her, A to Z. There is nothing mysterious about her to him at all. Zero. It means all of her diversions, her illusions, she would, and it's not malicious, but it's part of her nature and the fabric of the karmas of the creation, that whenever he would try to do a divine thing for his students, to lift his students up, she would block it. Hard. Really hard. Sometimes catastrophically hard. So his genius was like navigating around and through her, gauging what is she going to do? Like if I'm going to make this group of students come up as saints and get her darshan, and then she's going to try to throw every roadblock in the book in the way of that, how he would think, can I navigate through that with these souls to make them actually finally get to the finish line with her? Not easy. Really not easy. I'll give an example. So we had some colleagues who they were in a process to get a really huge darshan of the mother, and they had been working for several months toward that. I think there were about like 10, 12 people in that group, maybe 14 at the most. And they had to go through all kinds of rigmarole, unbelievable spiritual processes and crazy stuff to get this particular channel that they were going to get with her. And finally, the day came, and Swami they were going to go off-site somewhere in cars from the physical ashram that he has in Penakonda to some other place to get this experience. So that required they all had to get into these vehicles, yeah, and go. And they had, time. They had a window that they had to do this in. And what ensued was this thick confusion. It's like, I don't know how many people, okay, 12, 14 people, whatever, and a bunch of vehicles, which have plenty of seats and plenty of room for all of them. And a few people start fighting over where they're going to sit and in which vehicle. And the thing escalates, said folks who were there, to this like absurd proportion where people are stomping off like little spoiled babies because they're not going to get to sit in the front seat of some vehicle that they think that they should. Other people who are trying to be really clear are pleading with this whole group saying, you guys, please, we're going toward the darshan. Please just get in the car, so let's go. They were caught in this sort of web of confusion, thick, like molassesy. Their brains stop, and it's all these crazy blocks. And the long and the short of it is they missed their window. They didn't get there on time, and they missed the opportunity to be in the room with her. That's her illusion on them. That's pretty hardball. I mean, they've been building that energy for months and months and months and months and months. Gone. Nope. Not eligible. Idiots. It went like that. Why? Because of all their karmas that are in the way that she's reflecting and stimulating to come up. She's like, well, you want to come to me? Okay. I'm ready. My energy is here. And I'm also going to throw this huge ball of Maya at you and see how you handle it. And, well, they failed that one. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of failures like that on our ashram with her. Many failures, many different angles, but it wasn't easy. And it wasn't easy for Swami Kaleswar to herd us all like giant tigers and get us all in one line to receive that experience from her, especially not in a peak form. It might have been easier with other forms of her, but those are also fraught with a whole lot of other illusion that nobody wants to go there. Okay, so there were a lot of these kinds of things that happened. And in the early 2000s, he started giving the experiences of the darshans of her, usually to small groups, 4 people, 6 people, like that. One of the early groups, they then had the assignment from him. They had a 21-day assignment to be up in this Jesus temple meditating every night. It was pretty rigorous. I think from midnight till like dawn, every night they had to be up there meditating on a particular mantra or whatever. And then periodically, I think there were 6 people in that group, getting up and touching with their hand the heart of the Jesus statue there. He's 350 pounds of solid marble. And so they were doing that, and the idea was that at some point one of those people would touch the Christ and he would start to bleed from his heart. That this was an ability blessed by Mother Divine. They had just seen her in a darshan. Now they had to prove the energy of what they got from her. Otherwise, so what? You saw her, so what? So what? You talked to her, so what? She gave you something, big deal. What did she really give you at the soul level in terms of the miracle capacity? And how do you put that in motion? That was their assignment. So they get up to about 20 days, and apparently he hasn't bled yet, and Swami Kaleswar starts testing them, Well, I don't know if they're really going to make it. I don't know, they're really so unified as a group. I don't know, they really have the confidence. He's playing the levers of Mahamaya, testing them to see how strong is their resolve. How clear are they energetically in themselves to know that this will happen, right? So I think then he extended their deadline because they didn't make it in 21 days. But I think somewhere over the next week and a half or 2 weeks after that point, it did in fact happen. So that was a huge success. Not only they saw the mother and they were blessed by her to put certain aspects of her energy, her miracle capacity in motion, but they actually demonstrated it. So that was a big one. For me, so I've been in the room with her a few times, and every time was markedly different, dramatically different. The circumstances were different. The way that she showed up was totally different each time. And I would venture to say whatever it is that we received from her on each round of this was really different. The first time was in the early 2000s. I was in a small group of people, I think maybe 6 of us, maybe 7. Um, it was fraught with a lot of illusion, and I was very confused throughout the whole thing. I really did not know which end was up. Thank God some of the people in the group had a little more clarity. And in the sort of culminating moment when she showed up, it was in a really strange form, not at all what one would have expected. And we spoke to her.
Hmm.
She spoke to us. We spoke to her audibly, verbally, vocally. Yeah, and a lot of really wild, a lot of really wild uh, purification happened after that. At least for me, I don't know what happened to anybody else in the group, but I can say for myself, the whole thing was so discombobulating. And the way Swami Kaleswar presided over it, the things that he told us were absolutely going to happen in the course of this experience absolutely did not happen. It just flat out did not happen. And there were a whole lot of other factors in it that were just kind of, to me, kind of crazy making and upsetting. Yeah. And so by the time the thing was over, I remember I was in my room writing in my journal. I was so furious. Ah, and this happened and that happened. And he said this and this, right? Just really upset, which was her gift to me. She washed out, I think, a whole layer of really intense karmic blocks from me, but I didn't quite have that understanding in the moment. I was just riding the wave of being really frustrated and upset. And then somewhere in this furious journaling, I have that sort of wait a minute moment, and the moment is, geez, Alex, you just stood in the room with Mother Divine. 0.001% of the people on this planet can say that they've had that experience. You just had a super divine, extraordinary experience. Why are you here grousing? What are you so angry about? And I just started laughing at myself, to be honest. I was like, oh my God, what's okay. So then I saw Swami Kaleshwar in the ashram the next day, and he looked at me and said, "You angry with me, Alex?" I said, "Not anymore, Swami." Of course, he knew the whole drama, internally. That was really powerful. And it came a few days later. We were in a public meeting with him, maybe like 100 students around, whatever. And he was asking, what does it mean to surrender? What is surrender? And what's his role as a guru, as a bridge to the cosmic for all of us? What's his role with us in that sort of surrender business, right? And he's calling on people randomly, and they're giving kind of what I call Hallmark card answers. Oh, Swami, we surrender to you and you give us everything. And he's like, next. He's having none of it, man. Nonsense. It's all very precious. And a few more things like that. And I feel it come up in me. I just feel it like this surge. And I see my hand in the air and I'm like, that's interesting. Okay. I don't usually do that. Alex, what does it mean to surrender? I said, surrender means standing in the truth, no matter what it is. He said, say it again. I repeated it. Surrender is standing in the truth, no matter what. He said, say it again. He made me say it 3 times in nature to kind of like set that energy moving in this nature. And honestly, I would not have had that clarity about the nature of surrender had I not just been through this very dramatic, upsetting experience with the Mother Divine just a few days before. It really underscored that surrender is not a passive activity. Surrender to the divinity is an incredibly active, courageous, decision
Yeah.
that we make.
It reminds me of the movie, not sure if you've seen it, probably have. The Life of Pi, one of my favorite
Mm,
movies.
I haven't actually seen it. I know.
It's one of my
Big gap in my.
favorites.
Mm,
So there's a scene, so I'm not going to spoil too much, but there's a scene where he's out on the boat and he kind of just loses it. He gives up. He surrenders, like you're
mm,
saying.
mm,
He's on this little bitty rowboat in the middle of the ocean and a storm is happening.
mm.
And he gets to the point where he's just like, come on. He's like threatening the sky. He's over the point of being afraid of the weather.
Mhm. Mhm.
He's just embracing the chaos at this point.
Mhm.
And I think that's a great picture of surrender. It's not that things
Mhm.
stop happening, it's that
Yeah.
you stop caring. It's just, I've made a decision. I'm here. I'm the immovable piece.
Mm.
Send the storm.
Mhm. Well, and also recognize that the storm too is an illusion.
Yeah.
That the emotions about a storm are illusion. That the decision, the desire to run away is an illusion. The whole thing is just a giant confusion, illusion thing, and the only thing that you can really hang on to internally is the truth inside, the divinity, the unshakable, the immortal, which really doesn't give a rat's ass about the emotions or the feelings or the turbulence or whether you like it or whether you don't like it.
Yeah.
The reality stuff in us is made of a really different level. And so the discovery of that,
Mhm.
that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? There's nothing not only passive but subjugated about it. Surrender is not subjugation. It's really different, really different. And so
You
that was, mm,
you mentioned immortality. I'd
mm,
like for you to talk a little bit about the Amrita.
mm, Amrita. Mm. Yeah, what do you want to know about Amrita?
As much as you want to share. I'm one of the few crazy people that teaches immortality in public.
Mm,
My a lot of people don't know my spiritual father, Cobus van Rensburg. He was based in South Africa. He died 7 times just because
mm,
he decided he wasn't ready to leave yet. So
mhm.
major accident, died of cancer a few times. So even death's an illusion.
Oh, the biggest illusion. Hmm.
But yeah, I've the first time I'd heard about, well, I guess you could say the nectar. Of course, there's always the people who are in the spiritual community, but aren't necessarily mystics. Therefore, everything must be metaphorical and within the
Oh,
human body system. And I'm
mm,
like, I can see how you see it that way, but I feel like there must be an actual substance. And then I find my weirdos who are like, no, it's a real substance that can be produced if you know how, if you know what you're doing. So, uh,
mhm,
yeah, talk a little bit about the nectar of immortality.
wow. So Amrita, I can screen share, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Can I? I have a photograph of some Amrita that I think is more um, tells more about it than whatever. So back in it was in the early 2000s. I want to say it was like 2001 or two. I think it was probably two. It's all a blur to me because there was so much happening back in those days. But um, Swami Kaleswar, he had a group of students who were working on a spiritual process. They were meditating for a long time. They were carrying around huge containers of river sand from holy rivers around South India. And it was many months, I think they were building toward this thing. And then finally, he drew a lottery amongst those students. And the winners were two women. And he said, okay, we're going to manifest this incredible power object, this huge, incredible power object. And his idea was to make just a Shiva lingam, like an egg shaped stone, which is it's a symbol of Shiva, the God the Father, the infinite form of God. It has no beginning, no end. Anything that's round, anything that's egg shaped, you can't tell where it starts or finishes, right? That is the nature of Shiva, the God the Father in the Vedic tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So his idea was to make a Shiva lingam. And he said to these women, well, do you want just the lingam or do you want it also to have the base, right? The yoni, the feminine part on it as well. And they're women. So they're like, yeah, we want the female part, dude, of course. He was like, all right. So then he had this big pile of river sand and he had a sandalwood stick And he had them, poke around in this pile of sand. Is there anything in there? No. You sure? No, there's nothing in there. They poked everywhere, right? And then he had them stir it with this sandalwood stick. And as they were stirring, suddenly, dink, they hit something that had not been there before. And it was this Shiva lingam. It's solid emerald. I'll show you another photo of it in a minute, but it emits amrita. And it began, so you can see here's the sandalwood stick that they stirred with. This is the corner of the pile of river sand that was there. Um, and it instantly, so this is the Shiva lingam with the base, and it began to emit amrita. And that amrita, within a few hours, covered the whole floor of the building that it's in, which happens to be the place where Swami Kaleswar's tomb is now. And he used that amrita to bring dead birds back to life. It tastes like honey. I mean, it was a very honey-like substance. Totally not from this planet. You could tell this is not ordinary. What it did in your system was extraordinary. Even like putting a little on the third eye or taking it on the tongue is a huge, unbelievable, illuminating blessing. And so we would scrape it off the floor and bottle it. I mean, we had so much of it in those days because it was frequently flowing. And it was interesting when the tap was on, he would turn it on and off on his volition. But when it was on, when the Amrita was flowing, boy, the intensity of everybody's stuff coming up, the intense purification that was generated by the Amrita Lingam emitting that. The Amrita is like the product of the union of Shiva and Shakti,
Hmm.
of mother and father. It
Yeah.
it is the immortality that lies somewhere in between the two of them, and beyond them, but made into a form, coming in a physicalized form that can bless, that can heal, that can uplift any soul, and pull it out of that kind of primordial heartbreak. It imparts some of that immortality by ingesting it. Yeah, so we had loads of it back in the day. And then the purification would get so intense when it was flowing that he would look around the ashram and go, "Oh my God, you guys, I'm so sorry. I know it's really intense right now." And then he would stop the Amritalingam from flowing and let everything kind of settle and let everybody kind of calm down out of their very, very big, crazy emotions. I could show you another photo of that lingam in the Amrita.
Hmm.
So for years, it was kind of coming on and off and off and on. And it was really such a blessing to have that. And it was used in many spiritual miracle demonstrations. It definitely did bring dead birds back to life. It was used in a lot of different things. And Kaleshwar's comment was that later, a couple things. He said that lingam, that Emissi Amrita, he said it's a character on this planet for the next 1,000 years, bringing enlightenment to millions of people. Part one. Part two, he wanted it placed on his tomb, on his samadhi, when he was going to finally inhabit it, which he left his body in 2012. Um, and he said it will, at some point in the future, it will be pouring the Amrita while it's sitting on top of his bones. And anyone who tastes it at that point, they'll be enlightened on the spot. They'll see the Mother Divine. They won't have to go through rigorous spiritual work to get to that point. So this is after it had first incarnated as well. So you can see it's solid emerald. It's a really beautiful power object. That's the sandalwood stick that they had used to stir in the sand with. And there it's in a pot that would very soon be overflowing because it was still emitting amrita. Um, mm-hmm. So it is very, very powerful, supernatural, very real substance on our planet. Not a joke, that. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we've been mentioning Kalishwar for a bit, but the audience doesn't really know that too much about him. At least not my uh people who likely know me probably don't know Kalishwar. So just as a introduction, if you could kind of talk a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about Kalishwar, your guru,
Mm-hmm.
Swami.
Swami Kaleshwar, yeah, wow. I mean, good God, there's so much to say about him. Again, I should probably just screen share a photo so people have an idea who we're talking about.
Yeah. Because I want to
Um,
say he started, well, he
mm,
kind of gained notoriety when he was around my age. I
yes,
think
that is quite
24.
true. Yep, that's when he first came to the West. He was already a force in India, even before that. Oh, hang on a sec. I just kind of made a whoops. All right, hold on a minute. Let me be smart about this. Yeah, he came out with a splash, let me tell you. But in India, he already, since he was about 20, he had a reputation as a supernatural healer and as a great saint. This is what he looked like toward the end of his life. When he left his body, he was 39 years old.
Hmm.
Invincibly positive, invincibly divine, cheerful, relentless on his mission to wake up millions of souls. Yeah, so Swami Kaleswar, he was born in the early 1970s. He began developing a reputation for his miracle abilities by the time he was a teenager. And by the time he's 20, he had devotees already, which was funny because he was in college. He was in university, kind of screwing off, didn't care. He was already studying ancient palm leaf manuscripts from the ancient rishis and trying to figure out the blueprint of the creation and how he was going to share that with humanity, which was his marching orders from the divine. Then he came to the West in 1997 when he was about 24. And he came out swinging. He was a miracle healing saint. He cured people of terminal cancers in 5 minutes. He manifested objects out of thin air and gave them to people to carry the miracle energy of that object's creation forward into their healing practices, into their personal lives, to share with other people, to have a physicalized conveyor of the miracle energy. Huge things would pop out of his hands, whole, rosaries like malas. I mean, just wild. And he was demonstrating mastery over the five elements of nature: the earth, the fire, the sky, the water, the air, that create all the manifest reality of our illusion world. He was known for demonstrating also the healing miracles like what Jesus did. There were Christian students in those early years who asked him, "Would you turn water to wine?" And he was like, "Sure, yeah, bring a bucket." They bring a bucket of water, and a minute later it's red. The joke was at that time he didn't know what Western wine tastes like, and so that wine was kind of like red vinegar. Later, he understood a little bit more about wine, and his water to wine got a little bit more interesting. But yeah, so he was showing first, he was showing a lot of things as a miracle healing saint. He was showing it's a technology, anyone can learn this. These miracle abilities are not just in the hands of a few. Like people worship Jesus because he had miracle abilities. Yeah. He learned them. He learned them from the same source material everybody does, the ancient manuscripts. He wasn't born with all those nascent abilities showing themselves. He had to encounter his masters. He had to have his channels open. He had to learn some knowledge about the technology of how that happens.
Yeah.
And like all of us, he had to practice it.
One of my favorite stories that I found while reading one of Kalishwar's books was about
Mm.
his encounter with Betala,
Oh, Betala. Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm.
because that's an area that I've been
Mm.
talking
Mm.
about in Patreon a bit, just the relationship between those two entities.
Mm.
That's not the only time that those two interacted with each other. It came in different forms. Betala and John the Baptist are the same spirit. Just John's typically demonstrating let's just say a lesser dimension of it. The spirits are about the same. Well, the spirits are the same.
Mm. That's interesting.
The
Yeah, so
preparer,
Betala is a whole other, whew, that's a whole other.
yeah. I see him as kind of like the highest form of that tree, I could say. At least from the forms that I've been able to find. Because that's
He is.
yeah.
The Bethel energy is incredibly confusing to people because it seems incredibly negative, dark,
Mhm.
freaky, vampirish, scary.
Yeah.
Yet he is a gatekeeper, well, one level to Mother Divine, but secondly, he's the ultimate protector against and through negativity, which is why Jesus needs to win. He needs to kind of merge with Bethel before he can do anything else. And that requires pure fearlessness. As I'm sure you read, that place in Himalayas where you jump in the boiling acid water and it strips all your meat off your bones and you die, which is the only way you can win Bethel, is in that acid pool.
Hmm.
And Jesus was like, heck yeah, going in. No problem.
Cowabunga it is.
Woo! Yeah. He's an amazing, I mean, he's an amazing character. And it's only because he wins Bethel that he can do what he came to do on this planet to handle her full range.
Yeah.
Um, it's so unbelievable and amazing to me. So Swami Kaleswar, by bringing out all this knowledge and explaining all these things, is putting the lie to the religions that say, oh, well, this one is the only one, right? Jesus is the only one who could attain like that. Therefore, y'all are sinners and you're screwed and
Yeah.
you'll never be like that. So you might as well just suck it up and accept your lot and throw it in with Jesus that he's going to, quote unquote, save you, which is lovely, but that's not at all the point of any of it. The point is, why can't we all become like Jesus?
Which was his message after all.
Is totally his message. Same. All these works I did, you'll do in greater. Well, what do you think that means? Just to be nice to people? No. It means commanding the miracle energy. It means understanding life and death and what's beyond that. And it means understanding who is mother, who is father in a practicable way, not in an esoteric or an intellectual way.
Yeah.
That's a tall order, but nonetheless is possible. And so part of why Swami Kaleshwar incarnated was to bring the exact technology, how people could experience all that by doing some pretty hard work, actually. And we were in a meat grinder there in Penuconda for I was there for 5 straight years. The hardest work I've ever done, I would say, and the most obviously satisfying. And Swami Kaleshwar himself, he came to make masters. That was his sole mission. Demonstrating the miracles, teaching the extraordinary knowledge, all of these aspects of this incredible, charismatic, brilliant, funny, harsh character we call Kaleshwar was toward that end. He attracted many, many students to come to Penuconda. And then the gloves were off, and then he really started training us heavy duty, and mercilessly, really. So there aren't many like him
Hmm.
in humanity's history. There really are not. His command of the creation, his depth of the consciousness, his intimacy with Jesus, his intimacy with Mahavatar Babaji and all the great saints of India, his way of handling the mother, unparalleled. Really. And I'm not just saying that because I knew him well and studied with him and have a loyalty like that. I'm saying as a consciousness person, you just don't find them like that often. And I think one could make the case that he picked up where Jesus left off. Only from his estimation, Jesus was a successful failure. Didn't quite get it, did they? Especially those students in the Middle East. They were idiots and they screwed the whole thing up, and we got churches and hierarchies and abuse of power instead of everybody being like Jesus. So there was a big problem there. Swami Kaleshwar would say, yeah, Jesus' major failure, his stumbling block, was that he was too loving, too forgiving. He did not make his students really wash out their crazy blocks and their stupidity, their ignorance, their egoism and their jealousy and their competitiveness and their unworthiness and their ugh, all the stuff that came into the fore, especially after the crucifixion. They lost their miracle abilities. Jesus gave them everything. He gave them the same stuff what Kaleswar gave us. They were primed, man. They were going to be high consciousness characters, and it's worth noting that his inner circle were not 12 men; they were 12 women.
Hmm.
So they really got screwed in the ensuing power struggles, and
Yeah.
obviously were written out pretty well from the histories around Jesus. So that was a big, giant failure. And I think humanity, one level, has suffered for 2,000 years in the wake of that failure.
Yeah. We've been on pause for
A
about
lot of
two
unnecessary
thousand
pain,
years.
suffering. So here it comes again, Once it turned the new millennium in 2000, then came this kind of resurgence of the Christ energy, super strong on the planet, and Swami Kaleshwar kind of like spearheading the technology about how that can happen for millions of people, not just a chosen few or just one or something like that. It's ridiculous.
So
So
I have
that's
a
a little bit
question.
about, yeah. Uh-huh.
So from your understanding, um, why do so many other gurus shy away from the supernatural?
There's a bunch of reasons. That's a good question. Historically, so I'm talking 30, 40, 50, 100 years ago, somebody who has supernatural abilities isn't necessarily an enlightened character, and they're not necessarily scrupulous.
Yeah.
So it was widely considered amongst the top saints and the holy people that, okay, so if somebody has miracle abilities, fine, but you don't go running toward that. You don't get attracted to the showy display of it, particularly because there's no guarantee that that person is using it in the right way or that they're particularly enlightened. There are a lot of supernatural abilities that people can win, and they do, and then they just run off and misuse the energy to like attract people and then kind of abuse them,
Yeah.
financially or sexually or any other which way. So the general feeling amongst the saints was, sure, miracle energy happens, but we really don't focus on that. That was a general idea. Um, Swami Kaleshwar, here's the other angle with the miracle abilities. Let's say even somebody is straight up. Let's say they are ethical. They are really operating in a divine way. The miracles are her. They're coming from her energy, right? Her angle. It's the Shakti, it's the power. She, Mother Divine, it's a force. Well, but she's also a big illusion lady. So the more of her energy you gain in yourself, the more likely your egoism is to skyrocket, and more likely you are to have miracle abilities that end up kind of shooting yourself in the foot from the eternal or immortal spiritual perspective. Yeah, you got a temporary gain, and then you're lost in your egoism for decades, and then your lifespan is over. How did that help anybody? Not so much. And there are many saints fall in that category. Many. I've seen many. They get a dose of mother, they get a dose of the angels, they get a dose of certain high level things, and then they're insufferable egotists. And maybe they wake up out of it and continue their real spiritual world, or they go to their grave and then they have to just come back and pick up where they left off there. So Swami Kaleshwar was kind of breaking the mold in the sense that he came out swinging with the energy. And his particular angle on it was humanity is in such a suffering now.
Mhm.
It's so off the rails on so many levels that we really need the miracle abilities now. We really need to see God's energy in motion like that and learn. It's the fastest way to get the mother is to go through the miracle abilities. The problem is that's a double-edged sword because she can inflame your egoism and all your crazy stuff,
Mhm.
and then you really end up in a big mess, which is why people need a very harsh master who knows her games. And so when the students start getting, puffed up and beginning to act like psychiatric egotists, which we all did, The master is there with a very big stick to smack us back into our lane. No, you don't go that way. Yes, you have a tiny bit of power. Good. Develop it, but do not misuse that in any way. Do not puff yourself up. It's not for you. It's not about self aggrandizing at all. Zero. No. Whack. Get back in your lane. Um, yeah. So he took a really edgy mission in this lifetime, I have to say, dealing with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students in the miracle energies, bringing them up and having to wield the big stick quite a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Because that's, I've been in a few different communities, and that's one of the things that, when used correctly, is a tool, right? It gets people to think outside of the box and think outside of the ordinary enough to realize that there's something more there,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, back in my early days, like I feel like people who go through Christianity typically have a similar story at some point where we think the best way to help humanity is to argue with everyone.
It's like CrossFitters.
Yeah. So maybe my first 2 years of maybe taking Christianity serious, I thought, you know what? I gotta let these atheists know. I need to argue with y'all.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave that up just because I realized that there's no amount of debating that'll change a mind of someone who's just not interested. Or either they're not interested or they're already convinced. There's no amount of debating that'll get that to change. You might win an argument, but you won't win over a soul.
No.
So when I started moving in miracle signs and wonders, I was like, okay, I'm actually getting people to realize that this stuff isn't fake. I like, maybe you watch someone on TV, maybe they paid the guy, but I didn't pay you. So we have an agreement here. We have an understanding here. I didn't pay you. And it turned into somewhat of a science to get people to pursue the divine on their own,
Mm-hmm.
at least to pique their interest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were some who were wild for the moment, went back normal. There were others who was like, no, there's more there. I really want the royal family. I want to see that. I want to meet this God he keeps talking about. Then they go on and they live a great life.
Mm-hmm.
So when used correctly, I've been able to see a lot of good benefit out of it. Um, when it comes to, so that's one of the things that I noticed. I'm like, there's some cultures who have no miracle energy.
Mm-hmm.
There's some that have a little bit, a few here and there. There's some that have it but don't do anything with it. And I'm like, okay, where are the people that are stewarding it and working with it and being responsible about it?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like every culture has their mystics, every culture has their scholars, every culture has their charlatans.
Yes, true that. It will happen, and in almost equal measure. In fact, it'll be um, more of the negative characters than there are the real ones. Unfortunately, that's the setup of our nature, right? I mean, that's just the way of it. I do want to show you um, a miracle that Swami did. I'm sure you've seen this photo already, but
Is that the rose?
yeah, exactly. But I think your viewers might want to experience something really supernatural besides the Amrita, which is also pretty extraordinary. But so this was in America, actually. This was in Marin County in, I want to say 1997. So yeah, he was about 24 at the time. And he wanted strong meditators and healers only that day. So a lot of people came who were very experienced in spirituality, all kinds of different spiritualities. A lot of TM people, a lot of Muktananda students, and a lot of Toltec, like Castaneda and Don Miguel Ruiz type students, shamanic people were there. And they were all pretty beaten up, like they'd all been through it. They'd been doing spirituality long enough to really go through some hard knocks, and so a lot of people had illnesses there. A lot of people had a lot of pain from different injuries, stuff like that. And so at some point in the day, Swami Kaleswar kind of gauged the whole crew there, and he was holding this rose, and he made it ignite in his hand, This photo hasn't been altered in any way. This is a straight up photo from the day. And he shot a look at the photographer like, hey, catch this, right as he began to ignite the rose. So the rose ignites out of Swami Kaleswar's meditation capacity and his command of the fire element. So it burnt in his hand. It did not burn him. It reduced completely to ash. One of the holiest healing substances on our planet is ash. What's left when something's burnt, whether it's a piece of wood or a human body? That ash, the end point, the refined remains of the five elements, then can become a generating point.
Hmm.
It can become the starting of a new creation, right? That's like Phoenix from its ashes and all these sorts of metaphors that we have. Anyway, so it burnt to ash, and then he put that ash on everyone's third eye and gave a massive healing transmission through that miracle energy. And all the people who had physical problems that day, they were cured. Like, and there were about 40 people, and many of them were really suffering. So he just took all that through that miraculous intervention, relieved them of these karmic burdens that they had been carrying for some of them for quite a long time. Using the miracle energy to access the soul directly in a way that bypasses the conscious mind, because the mind can't process that. The mind looks at that and goes, is that for real? That can't be real. That defies what we know as the laws of physics in our planet. You can't just spontaneously ignite something in your hand, right? That shouldn't happen, except it's happening in front of your eyes. So your soul is engaged. The soul gets it instantly. The soul's like, oh yeah, I know this. But the rest of the human apparatus is a bit flustered and confused by the whole thing. Great, because that means the divinity can hit the soul very quickly through that being flustered.
Hmm.
And partly that's the role of the miracle energy. It is a shortcut to help a soul recognize itself, because we came from that same energy. We came from miraculous energy.
Yeah.
We are products of it, and we can be, as you said, stewards of it. But we've forgotten the whole thing and the connection to it and all like that. So to have that spark like reignited in a moment when you, through your senses, through your mind, witness something that the mind can't process, then it's hitting the soul. Then it's helping wake up the soul to its own capacity again. That's really important. And for me, that is the role of the miracle energy. That is the blessing of seeing God's energy in motion in a way that is so supernatural that really the mind is like completely stops. When the mind stops, then the soul is really accessible. And then the healing can happen rapidly, really rapidly, amazingly rapidly. Um, and of course, if we're talking on the level of heartbreak,
Hmm.
how to put that back together, all those broken pieces of the soul itself.
Hmm.
There's no faster medicine than the miracle energy. Why did Jesus demonstrate so many miracles? Same.
Yeah. It gets people to believe in the impossible
That's one
enough.
level. But another level is that you can infuse their souls with a spark of their own connection to the source.
That too. Yeah.
Wake it up. That to me is a real kind of resurrection,
Yeah. Because
bringing a
it
dead soul back to life.
it messes with the illusion enough for people to see it for what it is, if only for a moment.
Yep,
It's like everyone knows the true phrasing of, oh, this world's a hologram, it's an illusion, but
yep.
the ability to break the illusion enough for you to see behind it is a
That's it.
different thing altogether.
That's it. And only an illusion master, a real master of the illusion, can wield such a thing skillfully and deliberately to have it have that effect. And I have to say, Swami Kaleswar was an astounding illusion master. And, the things that he did in the West were like business cards. He was doing these miraculous things, one level to help clean up the karmas and help wake up these souls, but another level, it was to catch the attention of those souls that he wanted to bring to India to work with more intensely. And so those miracle experiences, when it hits somebody hard, And they're like, wait a minute, how did he do that? I want to know how he did that. And he's saying, I will teach you how I did that. Come to India. Oh boy. That's how we all ended up there, was through the demonstration of the miracles.
So one of the questions I have also is about the Sri chakra,
Oh.
right? What have been, I guess, the benefit of that, and what would you say is the difference between it in its drawn form versus the Meru?
Oh. Hmm. Well, that's a bunch of questions in there. So, what is the role of the Sri Chakra? Hmm. It's a bunch of things. So, number one, the traditional Sri Chakra, which I think most people have seen, right? They call it the Sri Yantra.
Hmm.
Um, you see it all over the place in spiritual places and uh, temples. You see art all over the internet, etc. Um, the Sri Chakra itself, it's how do you say it? It's exactly symmetrical.
Hmm.
It's upward angles, downward facing angles. I'll screen share so people can see it. Hold on. I'm just looking for one that I have that's like a straight up Sri Chakra. Uh, well, that's so funny. Like, I don't have a traditional ones per se. Here I have a picture of Shiva with a Sri Chakra behind him. The standard one, the normal one, the one that's been on the planet for thousands of years. So people will recognize, I think, this yantra. You see it all over the place. Yantra just means a structure, so you could call it a symbol as well, however, or a mandala or whatever you want to call it. But there's symmetrical, right? It's upward facing triangles, downward facing triangles, and a dot in the center. Um, that's the traditional Sri Yantra. Why it's significant is because it's the womb energy of Mother Divine. It's a depiction in 2 dimensions of her womb energy. That means her creation capacity. That means from where we all came. All the souls are made there in her womb. Everything is coming out of her womb chakra. So when somebody connects to the Sri chakra, just even looking at it, she's seeing that soul. It's more important that she sees you, less important than we see her, if you know what I'm saying. So in many of the temples in India, the traditional Sri Chakra is there somewhere. Sometimes it's really visible, and sometimes it's really not visible, or you have to kind of look around to see where it is. Doesn't matter. Instantly, when that structure, when her creation ability sees your soul, it's like it takes a snapshot, and then it begins working on us to give our how do you say, to like bless our desires, to make them come into fruition. That's all desires, by the way. It could be material, mundane desires, as well as the desire for, let's say, spiritual enlightenment or attainment or something like that. Hang on a second. I'm trying to find this one Sri Chakra. Yeah, this is a beauty. So this is several thousand years old. It was created by a saint called Adi Shankaracharya, who
Hmm.
was one of the great, great, great mystics and saints in our creation back some thousands of years ago. And he put this, he's the one that Mother gave her Sri Chakra to.
Hmm.
She gave her Sri Yantra to Adi Shankaracharya. He's the first person who got that. And he made it his business to go to all the power temples in India and make sure there was a carved Sri Yantra somewhere in those temples.
Hmm.
This one is from Sri Sailam, which is a remarkable Shiva, whew, an amazing Shiva temple. God the Father energy, thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. Super unbelievable divine. Like knock you down, so thick with the divinity there. But Adi Shankaracharya put this Sri Chakra there. It's red because they put kumkum, the red powder on it, when they do puja, when they do ceremony to it. So this is really old, and I believe he hand carved this himself.
Hmm.
So that's a form of the traditional Sri Yantra. What Swami Kaleswar did was he got an updated version of it from the mother.
Hmm.
And that's how he was teaching it, was a little bit different. Not symmetrical, not in balance, but skewed. And skewed in a way that reflects our time cycle, reflects our present condition, you could say. and helps us go back through her womb chakra in a very protected way, not like a open to all of her tricks and games and illusions and mayas and all like that. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can find really quickly a nice depiction of his Sri chakra, just so people have an idea. So the Meru is a three-dimensional version of the traditional Sri Yantra.
Mhm.
Same idea. But the Sri chakra itself, here we go, is it's multi, it has many uses. And I'll talk about those in a second. Let me show you. So this is Sri Kaleswar's Sri chakra. Very different from the traditional one in that, as I said, it's not at all symmetrical, right? The center point is slightly off to the left, so everything skews slightly to the left.
Hmm.
And because of that, it's creating a kind of unusual way, let's say, to access Mother's creation energy. And the 108 petals that are around it are bringing the Shiva energy, the protection there. So that we're going to her creation source, but not in a wild, uncontrolled, crazy, open to all her Maya kind of way, but in a really systematic, very highly protected, insulated, direct way. So, like, the idea is going through the miracle energy to get her true knowledge and understanding and connection with her, without all the fluffy illusion, distraction, diversion stuff that she's so prone to create in us otherwise. So this is a big gift actually to humanity, what Swami Kaleshwar did with that. So we see it as two-dimensional, right? You can draw it. One of the things that we learn in the tradition, one of the things that we teach is how to draw the Sri Chakra, but then how to use it.
Hmm.
Drawing it is one thing. Having it on a copper sheet or a silver sheet in your home and having it radiate on you all the time starts to bring that incredible blessing and protection. True. But when you know the yantra and you can visualize it and draw it yourself, you start to use it in meditation and it becomes rapidly multidimensional. It's operating in a lot of form and it's round and it's moving and the angles are switching. All the angles in there represent different aspects of this creation, very specific. So they're starting to get activated. The five elements are represented there. The miracle energy is flowing in there, both in terms of creating everything and then again dissolving it back in and creating it again and dissolving it. So it's a dynamic experience to inhabit that Sri chakra, which means you're going straight to her womb chakra. You're
Hmm.
sitting in her womb chakra. You're activating that. You're accessing her womb energy, and it is a kind of like a delivery mechanism for the miracle energy to happen. It's very, very powerful. Sri chakra is it's kind of a foundational technology in the Kaleshwar systems and everything he's teaching. Hmm. Yes, and that point in the center, the nada bindu, is
Hmm.
the creation point, the life and death point.
Hmm.
Everything enters this creation through nada bindu, including the human souls. And becoming conversant with going back and forth through that nada bindu point internally means crossing from all the creation that's in form, going to the formless through
Hmm.
the doorway of that, the potential for form, and the coming again back through into the world of form.
All right.
Yeah, so I don't know if that makes sense about this chakra,
Yeah.
but but it's a deep technology.
Yeah. It's a soul
Um,
science.
it is. Hmm. Yes,
It
and as
reminds
I.
me of biogeometry in a way. It's the science
Mm-hmm.
that Dr. Ibrahim Karim is kind of famous for today, which is the science of how energy moves through shapes and how they're able to pretty much radiate certain energy depending on the shape. So I see yantras as a similar science, as in the shape is connected to the spirit or the entity and kind of radiates a specific energy related to.
Oh, definitely. Yes. And none, yes. Hmm. Yeah. And can be used as a doorway back and forth in that kind of energy in the cosmic. I should show you another yantra while we're on the subject of yantras.
Yeah. Show
There's this,
the the Jesus mantra. I think my audience would like that one.
oh, the Jesus Yantra. Yeah, I will show you that. Hang on, let me show you this other one that links to Sri Chakra first, and then I'll show you the Jesus. Yeah. Um, so this is the Diamond Yantra, what Swami Kaleswar called it. Um, these are 2 pages of the original palm leaf manuscript. It's a few thousand years old, what it came from. And so you can see, like, this is actually it's a half a page of the palm leaf. There
Hmm.
would be another half over here, and same here. So they stacked them, yeah. They like a book, right? Stack, 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 and the holes are where they would put a cord through to hold the whole thing together. But this particular yantra, the diamond yantra, so called because of all the diamond formations in it, right, is the map of the dot at the center of the Sri Chakra, the Nada Bindu, the doorway between the manifest and the unmanifest.
Hmm.
This is that dot, like if you scoped in on it,
Hmm.
it would look like this. And the whole structure is nothing but Shiva and Shakti, the whole thing. All the angles, all the triangles and the diamonds and the diamonds and the triangles, they keep forming more diamonds and triangles. It's purely like her structure, and then all the mantras that are written on it, mostly it's Namah Shivaya Ji. Namah Shivaya being Shiva, and the 5 elements of nature. So this is that point through which everything is coming, through which you and I incarnate, through which we go when the soul leaves the body, again goes back through the Nada Bindu to the formless, um, and so on. Yes, these are really, really powerful technologies, incredible. The yantras are like a whole other, they're like one part of the unbelievable knowledge that Swami Kaleshwar came to bring back to us as human beings. I'll show you the JC Yantra because it's beautiful. Um, so the JC Yantra is, I think I have his original somewhere. Yeah, let's see. Mm. So this is the Jesus Yantra. So Jesus himself designed this thousands of years ago, and it took 101 of the top saints in the creation, top consciousness characters called rishis, the cosmic researchers, to execute it, to put it into motion. It is a map of the like the highest inner consciousness that human beings can have, can experience in ourselves. And this also we teach how to draw and how to use it and how to work with it, and it's very intense. Learning how to draw this yantra is like hours of therapy, uh, like years of therapy rolled into a few hours. The amount, because whenever you're receiving high divinity, it stimulates purification. That means you get an influx of high divine energy. Then everything in you that's not vibrating at that level gets stimulated to come out. And then you have more room for more divine to come in, and then more stuff comes out. And it's a kind of endless process, like a snowblower or something, pushing through and shooting out the back and pushing more and then creating a beautiful path there. The high divine energies are like that. When they come in, it's not, most people's system doesn't just welcome them in, right? There's stuff in the way. And that stuff in the way has to be kind of dissolved or moved aside to make more room, more room, more room for the divinity. So this is the way Swami Kaleshwar would call it, the highest healing device possible on our planet.
That's
The
awesome.
structure. Yes, it is very awesome. And I could show you, so we frequently do it. Once somebody learns how to draw it and work with it, then it's advisable they should put it on a copper sheet. And so this is my original one from Pinaconda that I did back in the day. Um,
Oh, that's nice.
so basically, Swami, he just drew it on a big whiteboard, and then he was like, all right, guys, just replicate it exactly and don't make any mistakes. You're just like, what the hell? Because if you look like, I mean, the upward and downward angles are fine, they're symmetrical, but these sideways things, holy cow, they're like pickup sticks just got thrown in a pile of triangles. And to try to sort out all these relationships and figure out how it all Woo! Grown men were crying, man. And we had a day. We had one day to get this all down. It was, yeah, that was quite something. That was around Christmas 2004, I think. Um, and his other concept was that people should do it on silver. That's copper is easy because it's cheap and it's easy to get in the U.S. But when it's done on silver, um, they it's having even more of an interesting radiation vibration, right? Because different metals have different properties. Here's one on silver,
Hmm.
um, which is super unbelievable. It's just such a gorgeous technology. I mean, I cannot tell you how much I love working with the JC Yantra. And even to have that metal yantra in your space, it creates that consciousness. It creates the protection. It starts to lift that soul, whether they believe it, they don't believe it, they think it's a nice art piece. It really doesn't matter. It holds that much consciousness energy, and it's just flowing, like you were saying, radiating.
Hmm.
Um, mhm. Yeah. So the
So,
JC yantra is pretty special.
so, in listening to you and a little bit that I could find on Kaleswar directly,
Mm.
um, talks a lot about Shirdi Sai Baba,
Oh yeah.
uh, Yeshua,
Mm-hmm.
um, Shiva, Shakti, Mother. You know,
Mm.
do y'all have a, I guess you could say, revelation on Vishnu? You know,
Oh.
we were talking a little bit off camera about my mala.
Yes. Yes. Ah, that's such a great question. So the short answer is yes, loads. The longer answer is this character here, Dattatreya.
Yes.
Dattatreya. So Dattatreya is, you'll note he has three heads, yeah?
Yeah.
Dattatreya is the
Triunion.
primordial. Hmm?
I call it triunion.
Mm. He, this figure is extraordinary in our world. And Dattatreya himself is the three characters in one, the generating, the operating, and the destroying, the God in one form. Why does this matter? Hmm. Generating is what they'll say in the Vedic tradition is Brahma.
Hmm.
He's generating the souls. He's creating the souls. He doesn't know how he does it, but he's creating the souls. His like department under Mother Divine, you could say, is generating. Okay, fine. So there's Brahma generating. He's also the source of all the knowledge.
Hmm.
Uh, Wait a sec here. I'll show you a beautiful depiction of these guys. So, um, that's his sort of department, if you will. Then, jeepers, that's not what I'm looking for. Hold on. Then Vishnu. Vishnu is
Operator.
operating, yes. And then you get to Shiva, the destroyer. God, correct? Generating, operating, destroying. Fantastic. So, generator only knows his department. Operator, Mahavishnu, he's operating the whole illusion. He is playing with all the relative opposites. Mm. Especially attachments, romances, relationships of all kinds, but also health. So one day you have it, next day you don't have it, right? Wealth, one day you have it, next day you don't have it. Ups and downs. Balancing the relative ups and downs in the illusion world of everybody's lives. That is the kind of purview, if you will, the department of Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu and Shiva have a very direct, very interesting relationship because after, okay, let's take a life, for example, let's say a human life or a blade of grass or a butterfly or an empire. It's the same. What happens is it generates, right? It starts, it comes in the creation, it's generated. Good. Then it operates for a time span. In the case of a blade of grass, it's pretty quick. In the case of a parrot, it's longer than a human life. Human life is whatever its average span is, right? There's a time cycle. It operates.
Hmm.
Once it's finished operating, then the destroying begins, correct? Destroying means Shiva's quality, he's destroying the attachments. He's destroying the illusions. He's destroying the illusory grip of the Maya that makes a soul think it's not a spark of the divinity. So by the time somebody finishes their lifespan, then usually where we go right after we die is to Shiva for a few days. But everybody gets afraid of destroying. Oh my God, it's going to end. Whoa. But the destroying is a new beginning. Again, it starts generating, right? This doesn't go God and stop ever, right? It goes God and then God and then God and then God. In that realm, the operator, he's kind of like, how would I say? Vishnu's nature is he stimulates the illusions. Oh, you should fall in love with that woman. Oh, and then you get married. Oh, and then you have children. And now you are really stuck in the whole illusion and you think this is a life. You think you're real. You think that this whole planet is solid and everything in it is so compelling and so real. The Vishnu Maya is to pull us into the field of the operating. But sooner or later, the operating phase will end. Then the destroying starts. So Vishnu and Shiva have this beautiful, like two sides of a coin, all of it toward trying to wake us up, right? So one day you're so healthy, and the next day you get a cancer diagnosis. Oh my God, now you might be afraid. Okay, that destroying is going to break some illusion there in the grip on you. Maybe it's part of the illusion of that you're not your physical body. Maybe it's part of the illusion of there isn't really anything to be afraid of, but you don't know that yet because you haven't walked through it. Maybe it is part of the illusion of, hey, that thing is going to take you out because your lifespan is finished and you're going to go on to the next thing. It could be a lot of different things, but it's a game, not a game. It's a, the roles of the operator to the destroyer are happening there. So this is Mother with her three kids, with Brahma, with Vishnu, and with Shiva. So these are also, they're representing the three forces that kind of make up our whole manifest creation. People ask me a lot, well, what do you think God is? And I'm like, well, to me, it's the God. It's the operating, it's the movement, it's the cyclical nature of God's energy and motion in this planet. It's not static, right?
Yeah.
So Vishnu, he's very glamorous. You know that. His wife is Lakshmi. She's all material, abundant lady. But she's also the one who comes up bringing the Amrita. So she's really, at her deepest level, she's the real abundance ma. She's not material. But everybody gets so swayed in the material and swayed by the luxury and swayed by the richness that it's very easy to fall into all those kinds of illusions in our world and forget they're really pointing to Shiva. They're really pushing. The soul needs to then get stripped of everything material, right? In order to come up out of its attachment illusions. There's a great story about Vishnu that I think really, hang on just a sec, that I think really underscores the point of him, which is, and you probably know the story, it's really famous in the canon of Vedic tradition, but there's a saint called Narada. Narada serves Mahavishnu.
Yeah.
And Narada says to Vishnu one day, hey, I really want to understand your Maya. How you create all this illusion. I really want to understand how you do that. And Vishnu says, oh, I'd be happy to explain that to you. But first, could you go get me a drink of water? There's a little stream over there in the woods. And if you just get me some water, I'll explain all about my Maya. Okay, so Narada sets off toward the little stream. And then between himself, his path, and the stream, there's a little hut. And he thinks, oh, maybe I'll just go knock on the hut and get water there. That would be easier than going to the whole stream. And how am he going to carry it and whatever. He knocks on the door. A beautiful woman answers the door. Little lotus brown eyes. And Narada forgets all about the water. Fast forward to, he's married her. They have 3 kids. The kids are teenagers. He's living the life in the hut with the beautiful woman and his beautiful family. And then the flood comes. The flood waters swell up the stream behind the house. The whole house is washed away. Wife and children die in the waters. And Narda is left holding onto a floating plank of what had been his home for many years, crying to the heavens, "Why is this happening to me?" as he's floating down in the floodwaters. And at that point, he hears Mahavishnu say, "Where's my drink of water? It's been 5 minutes." That is the operator.
Yeah.
So, this Dattatreya figure, this character who has all three in one, is unique in the sense that many souls will incarnate to be one of those roles. They'll come in as a Brahma saint. Usually, those are like people like Nostradamus who have future prediction abilities. They have a lot of Akashic record knowledge. They have a lot of ability to see like that, and they have great knowledge. Okay, that's a Brahma quality. So you'll see saints who are mostly like that. You'll see saints who are very Shiva. You know, they're just living in cremation grounds like Shiva. They're covered in ash. They're naked saints. A lot of the like North Indian Himalayan saints who are, you'll see them at the Kumbh Mela with
Hmm.
dreadlocks down to the ground and they don't wear clothing. They're very Shiva, incredibly Shiva. And then you'll see the Vishnu saints who are like the Hare Krishnas or the characters who are all decked out in gold and luxurious clothing, and they're very fluid and they're very beautiful and entirely irresistible, like Krishna, like Vishnu. Fine. But any of those three characters independently, they cannot know the totality of the mother. And so what arises in the cosmic is a yearning on each of these three separate characters. They're like, but we want to know you. So they have this idea to merge into the three into one, the generator, the operator, and the destroyer, in order to understand her totality, since they are the tools through which she makes the whole creation. If they look back at her as all the tools, then they can understand how she creates everything. And so they come as Dattatreya. Here's the crazy part: Dattatreya is the first guru on our planet. He is the primordial teacher energy. That's to say, because he's completely out of the illusion on one level, yet he incarnates within the illusion. He's the perfect bridge point to help the human souls to understand the cosmic. So he's the bridge point to the enlightenment. All world religions, all spiritual paths originate with Dattatreya. Whether they know it or they don't know it, it doesn't matter. But that is the first like teacher of the human beings about what's possible in the cosmic. Why this matters is that Shirdi Sai Baba, who you mentioned, the guru of my guru, who's a great miracle healing saint in the 1800s, wild guy. Baba dies in 1918. Lived his whole life as a beggar in the streets of a town called Shirdi. Didn't care anything about the illusion of the material world at all. Had zero interest in it. Only was working on behalf of humanity in really extraordinary ways. Shirdi Baba was 90% a Dattatreya avatar. He's an incarnation of all three in one. What that means is they're terribly unpredictable. You don't know who you're talking to at any given minute because they're constantly rotating between these three characters and qualities. One minute they're so loving, like a Vishnu, so appreciative. Next minute, screaming and throwing rocks at people or hitting them with a stick. Very Shiva, breaking the illusion. Other times, speaking incredible knowledge about any world religion or any spirituality, anything. But cycling all the time, very confusing to the human mind, to the human psychology. Very confusing. Very confusing to the illusion in us that is the structure of the Maya that operates in us. That's the point of Dattatreya. Jesus Christ, 90% Dattatreya avatar. They're the only two really pure avatars in our human history who are like solid Dattatreya. Jesus and Shirdi Baba.
That's
So
awesome.
that's a, yeah. And Datta, has a deep connection to Mother and is a huge expert with Mother. So I would venture to say Swami Kaleswar also very strong Dattatreya. Very strong. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So we're getting ready to wrap up.
Yeah.
Um, if you could leave some final words with the audience, I guess the floor is yours.
Gosh, I don't even really know what to say except I hope everyone is interested enough in finding out who you really are to pursue high level spirituality, not simple, easy, feel good spirituality. The reality things are usually very hard won and bittersweet and aren't easy, but are worth everything, you know. And so I think that's really my final sort of feeling about it. And just also to understand that as human beings, we all have a birthright to access the highest consciousness in ourselves and to operate in the way that a Jesus does, the way that a Buddha does, the way that Muhammad did, the way that a Vishnu character does. We all have that God given potential. Each one of us has Mother Divine and Shiva and all of these different energies we've been talking about inside us. And as long as they remain locked, then we don't even begin to imagine what is our full capacity and potential on this planet. And we all have the birthright to do that. And thank God, from my perspective, that Swami Kaleswar showed up and was giving the exact tools and mechanisms and understanding about how to do that. Wow. What an incredible service he provided for the human beings moving forward in the coming generations. So investigate yourself, find out what is what.
Awesome.
That's my strong feeling.
Awesome. So if people want to connect with you, partner with you, find your works and what you do, where can they do so?
Yeah, they can go to UCBK, the Universal Church of Baba's Kitchen, .org, UCBK. And also, I'm sprawled all over. It's so funny. I've got this kind of weird presence on YouTube. There are lots of interviews and videos and this and that, and they're just sort of all spread all over the place. So they can find me also. Um, there's a variety of things like talking about the teachings sometimes in more depth and even giving like different tools and angles and helpful things from the Kaleshwar knowledge, which was vast. Um, yeah, so I'm around. I'm also on social media. You can find me on Facebook, um, and now Blue Sky because I finally killed Twitter for myself.
I'll be on Blue
Um,
Sky shortly.
oh yay! Oh, find me,
You
please.
know, I have the I was here first type of syndrome with Twitter.
Oh, don't even get me started. I had built such a following, and I finally just I deleted everything, and I am cruising the skies over in the blue place, and it's wonderful, actually. It's really quite lovely. There's lovely people there, real people, not a whole lot of bots. So it's really
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah,
Well,
and that's
Alex,
my story.
this has been phenomenal. I'll definitely see about getting you on again. I'm pretty sure the audience is going to love you. I can already kind of read the comments. So thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Isn't it the case that we're always so happy to talk about what moves our heart, which is spirituality? I mean, end of the day, that's what we're engaged in, isn't it? So it's really fantastic to be with you and to be able to say some stuff, and hopefully it'll help someone somewhere come up, you know.
Well, that's it for this episode of The Inner. Love y'all. Until next time, y'all be blessed.